Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Turner. I'm the Assistant Director of Grant Scholarship Program, Grant and Loan Forgiveness Programs here at New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, and I will be your speaker today and guide through the wonderful world of part-time TAP. We're recording this session, and we'll post this session and the PowerPoint to our website shortly after the presentation is over, so that way you'll have access to the recording and access to the PowerPoint at a later time. What I ask for now is that you remain on mute. We've disabled the unmute option because we don't want to hear folks' background noise, and we will allow unmute when we open up for Q&A. But if you do have any questions you'd like to just put out there so you don't forget, you can jot them in chat, and we'll be sure to get to them as soon as we can. All right, with that being said, let's get started talking about part-time TAP. So part-time TAP allows students who attend CUNY, SUNY, independent, and now for-profit degree-granting schools starting in the 24-25 academic year the ability to award students converted part-time awards for TAP for part-time studies. So what do I mean by converted? We're going to see as we walk through this that part-time TAP is basically a way of converting a full-time TAP award for part-time study by way of the certification process. So students would be coming to you on the same rosters and through the same application process as any traditional full-time applicant, but the part-time TAP program enables you to submit a prorated certification for them to enable them to receive a part-time proration of that full-time award for those students who are eligible for this particular type of conversion. And so when awards are being certified, indicating that the student would be eligible for part-time TAP, the amount is prorated based on the amount of credits that schools are reporting to HESC via the certification process. So you can see here the value of the part-time TAP program, because students can receive, if it's a 6-credit part-time TAP award, 50% of whatever their full-time award was going to be. So if their award was scheduled to be $2,000 for the semester and they're going 6 credits, they could receive roughly $1,000 of that award prorated for a part-time TAP. And then you can see the proration scale down the line. Award calculations are not just purely determined on this proration schedule, though. So the amount of tuition the student's being charged is also being factored in. So you may not get exactly 50% of the student's expected award amount, depending on how much tuition charges they're being charged for that particular semester, which is something you'll also be reporting when you certify students. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we cover the certification process. In regards to the application process, students are completing the traditional or DREAM Act TAP application, requesting a full-time TAP award and going through all the eligibility screening and criteria to receive a full-time TAP award, which includes income verification, or what we call IVP, ability to benefit, so students still have to meet the U.S. high school or New York State equivalency degree requirements in order to receive a New York State award, and that includes students who are receiving part-time TAP. Also, for residency requirements and their citizenship or New York State DREAM Act eligibility, all part of the standard requirements that students would go through when determining if they're eligible for a TAP award, and which would then in turn determine if you can then qualify them for part-time TAP. So if a student completes a TAP application and is determined to not be eligible because, for example, their income is over the $125,000 New York State taxable limit, then they're not going to be eligible for part-time TAP, right? Because they have to be qualified for a full-time award through the application process in order for you then to certify them as eligible for part-time TAP. So just a reminder about our 2 different application pathways that we have here in New York State. We have our traditional pathway for students who are FAFSA filers and applying through what we call the New York State Student Aid Payment Application. And then we also have our DREAM Act pathway for students who are completing our DREAM Act eligibility form and then moving on to apply for TAP through the DREAM Act. So which pathway they choose to go through depends on a number of factors, including the student's citizenship, immigration status, and their residency status, along with other factors like if they have two or more years of attending high school in New York with high school graduation in New York State high school equivalency. So there's a number of factors that would the student would be looked at when going through the DREAM Act pathway, and then the same factors that we've always looked at for the traditional applicants: New York State residency, citizenship, meeting the Title IV requirements, so on and so forth. So a lot of people get confused with part-time TAP and accelerated study. So we get this question often, is part-time TAP the same as accelerated study? And the answer is no. Accelerated study deals with rules for students who are receiving a third consecutive TAP payment for a third consecutive term, where that third consecutive TAP payment is considered to be an accelerated payment. And what makes the payment accelerated and requires schools to review the accelerated study requirements is the fact that the student previously received 12 or more points in the prior 2 full-time terms that made them qualified to now have this third consecutive term be considered an accelerated term. Or if you run on a quarter-based schedule, then it would be that fourth consecutive quarter where they're receiving an award above the usual 12-point academic year limit that the student is getting paid TAP for. And so while students can receive part-time accelerated study awards, part-time TAP just deals with regular terms that are non-accelerated, and there's special requirements that we're going to cover in this session that they have to meet to get part-time TAP. But for accelerated study, if they're part-time and you've determined, for example, that summer or fall term is going to be their accelerated term, then they have to be reviewed for the specific requirements under the accelerated study program, which still has a 24 credit prerequisite that part-time TAP no longer has. So you just want to be careful when assessing a term that you believe is a third consecutive, or if you're trimester, fourth consecutive term, where a student could be considered accelerated, in which case their full-time or part-time certification would have to be done under the accelerated study requirements and not a non-accelerated term, in which case you could look at them for these part-time TAP requirements that we're going to talk about here. So for most schools, traditionally summer would be a accelerated term if students have a fall matriculation, because summer would be that third consecutive and optional term, right? So they matriculate out of high school in your college in fall, they attend spring, both terms full time. Now they want to go summer, then they have to meet the accelerated study rules. However, accelerated study, just the requirement is talking about terms that may be considered accelerated. So if you run a more non-traditional enrollment schedule where you allow students to matriculate in spring, matriculate in summer, and take classes all throughout all these terms, then summer may not be the accelerated term. Summer could be just one of the standard terms, and then a fall or spring term could become an accelerated term. It's all about tracking the prior payments that a student's received and determining whether or not we're in this consecutive term area where accelerated study rules have to be applied, because it has to be considered under an accelerated term and under accelerated study. I just see some people in the comments saying that they're not hearing any sound. So if you, I'm not seeing more complaints, but if people are having any sound issues, just make sure you check your audio options, or you could also dial in. If anybody's saying that they can't hear anything at all, maybe try leaving and rejoining the meeting. Sometimes these virtual meetings can be tricky, but if no one can hear anything, please let me know that, everybody put it in chat, and then I'll see if I can restart on my end. But I checked all my connections, everything said we are good to go. All right, so I don't see any more people saying they can't hear. So yep, somebody saying they can hear me loud and clear. All right, so we're gonna just attribute that to local user issue. All right, let's talk about eligibility requirements for part-time TAP. The first thing is that students have to be enrolled in anywhere from 6 to 11 credits to be in their program of study to be considered a part-time TAP recipient. So if students have only 3 credits, then there wouldn't be a candidate for this program, right? They could be a candidate for aid for part-time study, which is not the same as part-time TAP. It's a completely different program. But for part-time TAP, it's a minimum of 6 up to 11 credits. They also must be taking coursework that spans the minimum term length to receive New York State aid, which is a term of 15 weeks. So if you're a school that runs micro or session-based term structures where you have your fall semester has 2 or 3 sessions that encompass the entire fall semester, the students need to have coursework across all those sessions, all of those terms that make up your fall semester, in order to be considered for any New York State aid program, including part-time TAP. So for example, if your fall has a session A and a session B, and the student's 3 credits in session A, 3 credits in session B, that term spans the full 15-week length minimum term period, then yes, they could be eligible for a 6-credit part-time TAP award. However, if the students only registered for all of their courses in one session, say session A, they're all 6 credits in A, they have nothing in term B, then they wouldn't be eligible for any New York State aid program because they don't have courses that span the full 15-week term, including part-time TAP. This also would include late registered classes. So if the student is, starting, if you do a late matriculation, they start late and they register for all term 2, term B, whatever you call it, courses that are considered late start courses, then they would not be eligible for part-time TAP because, again, they have to have coursework that spans the full term length. Now, the students, if you allow them to change their registration, let's say drop their classes for future sessions at some point during session 1, the students, our rule for that is that they shouldn't be certified until they're 100% liable for all of their coursework across all the sessions. So typically students should be pre-registered for their coursework across all of the sessions that encompass your term, and you shouldn't certify TAP or part-time TAP until you're into the point of that second or third micro session where now the student is liable for tuition, 100% tuition liable for all the coursework that spanned all of the terms prior to that, including the term that's the final session of that semester. So just be careful with that because we know some schools have been asking us, oh, we have students that just do some part-time coursework in one of our shorter sessions. Can they get part-time TAP? And the answer is no. They have to have that full semester's worth of courses spanning all of those different sessions. Another question we get is, can a full-time student potentially be a part-time TAP recipient due to having issues qualifying for full-time TAP due to applicable coursework? And this was looked at about a year or two ago, and we said the answer is yes. Schools can parse a student's registration for the portion of that registration that's TAP applicable, and if that portion is 6 to 11 credits, then they could receive a part-time TAP award from anywhere from 6 to 11 credits. So but the minimum, again, to get a part-time TAP award is 6 credits. So let's say, for example, we have a student who's taking 6 degree applicable credits and 6 credits that are not degree applicable, cannot be fit anywhere into the student's degree requirements. Then yes, that full-time student could be certified for a 6 credit part-time TAP award. However, when reporting it to us, you would report them as eligible. You report them as a 6 credit part-time TAP recipient and only give us the tuition charges for the 6 applicable credits. You wouldn't certify them as a full-time tuition, being charged full-time tuition, because that's going to mess with the award calculation. You want to make sure that if needed, that you're reducing the tuition value on the certification to whatever their actual part-time charges are if you do parse the enrollment of the student. Keep in mind that there are, for students that are in the last year of study, the second to last and the last semester of study, there is that full-time status leniency where you may not need to parse credits to give students a part-time TAP award. So just a reminder, right, in that second to last semester of study, it's the 6 and 6 rule. 6 credits need to be degree applicable, and they could take 6 credits in whatever they want that are non-applicable to be considered for a full-time TAP award. And for the final semester of study, it's 1 course that's required of any credit. Could be 1 credit course, 2 credit course, 3 credit course, and then the remainder of the credits that they need to be full-time could all be non-applicable coursework. So you may not need to certify a student for part-time TAP in that final year of study, those last 2 semesters, if you can apply the leniency to them and they could be then considered for a full-time award. Remedial courses. So for those of you who offer students those non-credit but have credit equivalencies for remedial coursework, students who are taking remedial courses can be considered for part-time TAP. However, they must be enrolled in at least 1 credit-bearing course in that same term in addition to their coursework. So for example, if a student's taking 6 credits of 6 kind of credit equivalent non-credit remedial courses in their first term, and they have 1 actual 3 credit-bearing class, then yes, you can give them a 9 credit part-time TAP award for that term. But if they're just only enrolled in remedial study and there's no actual credit-bearing coursework, then they would not be eligible. Now, while the state has made some changes to the rules for part-time TAP to remove what used to be a 24 credit prerequisite for part-time TAP recipients, that no longer exists. But one factor that does still exist in the law is this first year requirement. And this requirement says that in order to be qualified to receive a part-time TAP award, students must have been a first-time college student on or after the 2006-2007 academic year. And so because that requirement still exists, the programming in our system will look for and identify students who have previously received TAP prior to the 06-07 academic year, and will not allow you to certify them for a part-time TAP award. And if you attempt to, it will decertify the student as not eligible, not full-time. So please keep this in mind if you have an adult continuing ed population and you're looking to say, oh, we can give these students part-time TAP now. Please be sure that you check their first year receiving TAP or transfer history to see if they previously attended college prior to 06-07, because you need to be in compliance with this. Or if you try to certify the student on the HES system and we have records of them previously receiving TAP, the certification is going to be disallowed. And so we'll see the certification screens a little bit later, and you'll notice that for these students that are not qualified, you won't have the credit options to certify them for part-time TAP. It will not be available. There's also a C average requirement that exists for part-time TAP, which says that all part-time TAP recipients must already have a cumulative 2.0 GPA if they are a continuing college student. So the only exception would be your first time, never attended college before, never been matriculated in college. And we're not talking about students who may have done college courses in high school. Those wouldn't be considered matriculated college students. But we're talking about students who previously were matriculated in a degree or certificate program at a college. They would need to be coming into your school with a cumulative GPA of 2.0. If they're a first-time student, then obviously they would not have any GPA history, and they would be permitted to receive their first certification of part-time TAP without having the C average requirement for their very first term of study at your school. But moving forward in their second, third, fourth terms, they would need to meet the 2.0 cumulative GPA requirement. So with this requirement, we get questions about transfer students. How should schools evaluate students who are coming in as transfers to determine whether or not they're meeting the 2.0 cumulative GPA requirement? And what our guidance to school says is that you should be basing it on your transfer credit policies. We know most schools require that if students are transferring credits, that they're transferring in at that C average 2.0 grade level in order to bring in those credits, in which case you would consider the student to be a 2.0 based on their transfer credit evaluation. If you have transfer credit policies that are much more generous and you take Ds, C minuses, and lower grades, then the student may not be in meeting the 2.0 requirement immediately based on coming in with a 1.0 cumulative average or whatever you determine that average is going to be based on the transfer credit evaluation. In that case, the student would have to attend the semester without receiving part-time TAP, and then hopefully once they get grades on the books, they can get back over at or over a 2.0 and then receive it in the future. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, somebody's asking if we can get the presentation. Yes, the presentation is being recorded and PowerPoint, and the recording will be posted on our website at some point in the near future. Someone asked, is there a worksheet or PDF or chart that breaks down all the requirements to meet part-time TAP? There is. We have it on, we have all the requirements listed on our website in the part-time TAP resources. ATB requirements is something that's administered and governed by the state education department, and they have a site that has all of the requirements for ATB. So if you Google New York State Education Department ability to benefit, you'll find the Office of College and University Evaluation, and they have a whole page with FAQs and everything you need to do regarding ATB. So a question came in about this 2.0. Can waivers be used to qualify students for the 2.0 GPA? And the answer is no. Waivers cannot be used to qualify students for a GPA, for the 2.0 GPA, because it's a prerequisite of the program. And so the waiver is not intended to qualify. It's meant to help students regain good academic standing who've fallen out of good academic standing. The waivers are not designed in statute to help students qualify for part-time TAP. So that's not written in the law, and that's not a feature of the waiver. So the students will not be able to use the waivers to get the 2.0. They'll have to earn the 2.0 if they lack it. Another question about transfers in GPA. Again, I'll repeat what I said. It's based on your transfer credit evaluation policies. If you're bringing in transfer credits at a C average or better, then they're coming in as a 2.0, then they're fine. If your transfer credit policies are more generous and you take less than a 2.0 graded class to bring them in, then you'll have to evaluate them at the GPA that you bring them in on or the GPA that they left their prior institution at. And if that's less than a 2.0, then the student would not be eligible. So it's very simple. Do we consider the 2.0 based on transfer credit evaluation, or do we consider the student less than a 2.0 based on our transfer evaluation? And if it's less, they're not qualified. In addition, while meeting this 2.0 GPA, it's not the only requirement, right? So students also, if they're continuing students, need to be in good academic standing. So we're going to talk about that when we talk about SAP and program pursuit. So it's not only just having the cumulative 2.0 GPA, but it's also if they're a continuing student, making sure they're meeting the SAP and POP requirement. Somebody's asking me about 15-week terms. It's a requirement for all New York State aid programs, yes, including APTS and VTA. You should not be awarding New York State aid programs to students who are attending terms less than 15 weeks or you're out of compliance. So combining part-time TAP awards, can students receive part-time TAP along with part-time scholarship if you're a 2-year SUNY or CUNY community college where students may be receiving the part-time scholarship, or if you're a school who participates with APTS? And the answer is yes, they can receive the trifecta of part-time TAP, APTS, part-time scholarship. You can combine part-time awards as long as the amount that the awards provide combined do not exceed the student's part-time tuition charges for the term. So for some students, their part-time TAP award may be enough to carry the day and cover what they owe. For other students, they may need assistance from other programs. In terms of the order that we pay, if they're receiving part-time scholarship, that would be the first thing that we would offer, then part-time TAP, and then APTS would be last. We do want schools to make sure that they're considering the point considerations when giving students both part-time TAP and APTS. We saw the proration charts before. If a student's receiving a 6-credit part-time TAP award, they're going to be charged the prorated point amount of 3 points. And if you're also going to give them APTS for the same term, they're going to use another 3 TAP points based on receiving an APTS award for that same term, meaning that they're using 6 TAP points for 1 term of part-time study. This may lead to a rapid exhaustion of the student's point eligibility over multiple terms of part-time study where the student's requesting and receiving both part-time TAP and APTS at the same time. So if you're a 2-year school where the student's taking advantage of this, by the time they get to their 4-year program, they may have little to no eligibility left for TAP by way of using their points for multiple part-time programs. So again, schools are freely allowed to counsel students against using the multiple programs, especially if there's no dollar value that's really going to benefit the student. If they're getting $100 or $80 from APTS, maybe they'd want to save the points for when they really need TAP down the line. But for other students, if they're attending a private school and they need every dollar that they can get, they may want to use all the programs to help cover as much tuition as possible. Somebody's asking, are you required? Only if the student requests it. So if the student applies for both part-time TAP and APTS and they are requesting it, then yes. But if they haven't requested it, then no, you're not required to go screening and telling all your students, hey, you can get both programs. You just kind of put it out there, you see who applies. And if you have somebody who's applying for both, you can try to counsel them and let them know, hey, do you really want both? Part-time TAP may cover most of what you owe. And then see if they decline the APTS application, because APTS would always be the last thing. When awarding these multiple programs, right now we have a manual certification process for APTS that's very labor intensive on our side, where it's paid on the consolidated scholarship roster. So let's talk about evaluating good academic standing when it comes to part-time TAP recipients. And so we know that evaluating good academic standing means looking at 2 measures, one that we call pursuit of program or POP, and one that we call satisfactory academic progress or SAP. And what pursuit of program is a measurement of the student's effort to complete their courses from start to finish, right? They enroll in a course, they attend day 1, and do they attend all the way through the final exam? SAP is more of a quantitative measure of how many credits the students earn and what their cumulative GPA is based on the number of TAP payments that they previously received. So when we talk about pursuit of program, there's a percentage requirement that says that when a student attempts a course load, whether it's full or part-time, there's a minimum amount of courses that they need to make sure that they complete start to finish. So based on what year they are receiving TAP, there's a 50% threshold, there's a 75% threshold, and there's a 100% threshold, and that would be in the 3rd and 4th year. This is not their year in college. This is their years receiving TAP. So you can have a student who's been to college for 4 years, never qualified by way of income for TAP, who wouldn't be a 4th year pursuit requirement because they've never received TAP in those prior 4 years. It would be their 1st year receiving TAP. Let's say now their income is qualified, now they're getting TAP. So we would then be looking at them in the 50% pursuit threshold. So for part-time programs, the minimum course load to pursue is 6 credits because that's the minimum part-time course load. For full-time students, it's 12 credits. But for part-time students, the minimum credits that you need to be a part-time TAP recipient is 6. So we always base our pursuit evaluations on the minimum part-time course load, which is 6 credits. So for a 1st-year student, they have to pursue 3 credits, right? 1st-year TAP recipient, 3 credits because it's 50% of the minimum part-time course load, 6 credits. In the 2nd year receiving TAP, it's 4.5 credits, right? 75% of a 6 credit threshold. And then in the 3rd and 4th year, it's 6 credits for each of those years because it's 100% of the minimum part-time course load. So it's not based on their enrollment. So what do I mean by that? If the student is a 1st year TAP recipient and you give them an 11 credit part-time TAP award for that semester, and at the end of the semester, you want to know, okay, are they meeting pursuit? They would only need to have successfully pursued 3 out of 11 credits, not 5.5 credits. So it's not based on what they're enrolled in, it's based on the minimum part-time course load. And so at that 1st year, it's only 3 credits that need to be pursued. So that's what we would be looking at. So what courses would count as not being successfully pursued? Well, obviously courses that were not attended or courses that were not completed. So any courses that you give a grade designation that shows that they never finished the course or never attended the course, like a withdrawal failure, withdrawn, or anything like that, then these would not be acceptable for pursuit purposes. So let's look at an example. A student is certified for a 9-credit part-time TAP award for your fall 24 term and has previously received 6 TAP payments. You see they have 36 points used prior to this semester, so they have 3 years already under their belt. They attempted 9 credits, and at the end of the fall, you see they got 2 C grades, but withdrew from one of those 3-credit courses, so 2 C's and a W. Are they meeting the pursuit requirements to qualify for a TAP award for their spring 25 term? And the answer is yes, because they were required to pursue only 6 credits, which is the minimum part-time course load at the 100% threshold. They did that. They got their 2 C's. Even though that 1 W, they were registered for 9, they got a 9-credit part-time TAP award, they are meeting pursuit. Since that is the requirement is based on 6, not based on 9. So there's a question that came in that said if they're enrolled in 3 credits in one of the 8-week sessions, then would they not qualify for APTS? The answer is yes. They cannot receive APTS for a term of less than 15 weeks. So they need to have credits across all the terms that encompass the full 15-week term to get any New York State aid program. You should not be giving APTS to students who are only attending a micro session. Let's talk about SAP. So for satisfactory academic progress, that is the quantitative measure looking at charts that we have that say at this point of receiving a payment, the student must have this amount of credits earned and must have this cumulative GPA, and we'll look at the charts in a moment. The trick with evaluating for part-time students is that you would need to determine has the student earned enough points to reach the milestone where they need to be advanced in the chart. So we're going to be looking at these charts, and we have 2 charts that typically most schools use. We have our 2010 or thereafter non-remedial chart. So this is the chart that schools would use if the student is a 1st-year TAP recipient on or after the 2010-11 academic year, and they're not considered to be remedial. And then we have our remedial and pre-2010 chart, which would be for students that maybe got TAP in 06, 07, or were considered remedial by way of testing in as remedial, requiring 6 or more remedial courses, 6 or more equivalent credits of remedial study in their very first term at your school based on your placement testing, or they're in one of your opportunity programs, right? So, SEEK, CD, HEOP, EOP, depending on what kind of school you are. So with these charts, we need to determine that because these charts were written for full-time study. So when we're looking at first payment, second payment, third payment, fourth payment, it's advanced in point increments of 6. So for their very first TAP payment, it's going to be, based on their first payment is their 6th point. That's the first point that they're receiving is 6 points, and they would be at the 0 requirement. They get that first payment right without needing a GPA, without needing a credits earned. So let's say, for example, when we're looking at a part-time student, they came right out of high school, 2-year school in the fall, never received TAP before, have no points, never matriculated, they're not a transfer or anything like that, and they go part-time, they go 6 credits for their fall semester. And you give them a 6 credit part-time TAP award, which charges them 3 points. Now they come back for spring 25, and you're going to evaluate, are they meeting the SAP requirement to get their next either full-time or part-time TAP payment, whatever they're requesting for that semester. So we wouldn't advance that student to the second position. They don't need to have your natural instinct would say they should have 3 credits and a 1.1, but that's based on full-time progression. Because they went half-time, they're actually still stuck on the first slot of the SAP payment chart because they haven't received enough half payments to be advanced to the next full payment slot, second position of this chart. So that student who attended the first semester, got a 6 credit part-time TAP award, could have a 0 GPA and a 0 grade point average and still be considered meeting SAP for their second term of study at the school. So keep that in mind. We always, when we evaluate this, we're looking back at, we don't advance the student forward based on the amount of payments they receive. We're always looking at points, and do they have enough points earned from the combination of their part-time awards to advance them to the next position of the SAP chart. So somebody's asking about a student who's a third-year student. So let's look at some examples. So I just mentioned this already, that because SAP chart levels are based on full-time progression, students who are receiving part-time TAP awards may require 2 or more part-time terms to be combined before you could then evaluate them on the next level of the SAP chart. So we always say when you're looking at points, whether it's 33.5 points or 3 points, you're always looking backwards in the SAP chart, not forwards. So let's do this example, which is actually close to the question that we just got in chat. We have a student that you're looking at for, let's say for the fall 24, who's previously received part-time TAP awards, and you're evaluating to see, can they get part-time TAP again, or maybe they want to be full-time for this fall semester. So you look at their first year, they're a 21-22 first year recipient, non-remedial, and they have 33 lifetime TAP points already earned. When you're evaluating them here, it's going to be the 33.5 points. So based on that, where do we place them on the chart? So of course, we're going to use the 2010, 11 or thereafter chart. And in this case, while they may have been to school already for 3 or more years, based on the number of points that they have, which is 33.5, we wouldn't put them in the 6th position of the chart. We would still keep them in the 5th position of the chart, which would be the 30-point level, because they don't have 36 or more points yet earned to be at the level of the 6th position of the chart, where they need to have the requirements of the 6th position. So we're always looking backwards. So we're always looking backwards to say, all right, they don't have enough points to be at position 6, so they should be at position 5. And as long as they meet the position 5 requirements, then you can consider that they're meeting the SAP requirements for where they're placed. Part-time TAP for non-matriculated. We did a training on that not too long ago. So this is just about regular TAP. I would advise you to look back at our part-time TAP for our non-degree or non-degree TAP training that we did. And we can give you that recording if you want to email Priority Services. We talk about evaluating SAP and everything. It's different when it comes to the non-credential programs. So this is not a presentation on non-credential certification. There's a question about, will we create a SAP chart? So no, because we can't. I'd have to create 50 SAP charts, right? What if they have 0.5 points, 1 point, 1.5? 2.5. That would literally be, you'd need a chart for every single type of point progression scenario. So no, we can't make a SAP or POP chart that would make it easier for you to make this determination because of the variance in all the different point amounts that students can have, the previous payment amounts that they can have. So unfortunately, you have to do the work of doing your best to make this evaluation and seeing where you're going to place them on our charts. All right, so let's talk about certification. So school certification is what would be the key indicator to approve a student for a part-time TAP award. So we often get calls and emails from students and they say, oh, I want to get part-time TAP. And what we tell them, we give them our webpage with the requirements, and then we say contact your school, because only your school would be able to convert you to a part-time TAP recipient. There's nothing that HESC would do to initiate a part-time TAP award for the student. It has to be done by school certification. So you would be looking at your normal rosters where students show up with their full-time awards, certifying them as eligible, but then indicating the number of part-time credits the student is enrolled in order to then convert that full-time award when it's remitted into a part-time TAP award. Along with adjusting credits, you're also going to be adjusting tuition charges if the student's part-time charges are going to be below our max tuition value amount, which is $9,999. Please do not chat in there that when we're going to increase it to beyond 10,000. That's a long-standing request that we'd like to do. But right now, we love the system we have, not the one we want. And so the max value is 9,999. So with that tuition value, let's say you're a private college and for 6 credits, you're still charging them $15,000 in tuition for the year, for the semester, then you wouldn't have to adjust the tuition charges. But if your tuition schedule for a 6 credit student is lower than 10,000, then you would want to adjust the tuition field accordingly. Somebody's saying that we base SAP eligibility for the minimum of 6 credits, even if they're enrolled in more credits. Yes, because the minimum, so think of it this way, Christine, for a full-time student, the minimum full-time course load is 12 credits for pursuit. What if you have a student who's registered for 18 credits? Do you base the pursuit evaluation on 18 credits and not 12? No, you do 12. So if the student had withdrawn from one of those 18 credit classes, but still was okay in the core 12 credits, they would be fine for pursuit. It's the same thing for part-time TAP. We're not basing it on their actual enrollment as a part-time student. We're basing it on the state's requirement of what we call the minimum part-time course load, which is 6 credits. So it's always 6 credits when we're looking at pursuit. All right, so let's take a look at HESC web screens and how you certify online. And what happens is you log in, you look at your students, you have your view student record where you can see your student status. You want to see, of course, that they've been awarded, that they've cleared income verification, and that they're on a roster, right? That would be the milestone in which we'd know, okay, the student is approved for a full-time award, and they may be a candidate for part-time TAP. Also on this screen, though, we could see what first year they are, and we'll also see that on a roster, so that way we're not improperly advising the student, oh, hey, I think you can get part-time TAP, when they may have a first year of 2001. So to do your roster certification manually, we know a lot of schools use batch processes, and your batch process may be doing your part-time TAP evaluation in addition to your full-time. Your menu options on your left, you're going to have your view submit pending certification and your view correct area where you would do your award maintenance, where you would do your certifications or do your certification corrections. And you'd put up your students on your rosters, and the student that you're ready to certify, you click on their details, and then you would evaluate all their information on the roster. We have a full-time award. We have our TAP points, so we know that the student is at or beyond their first year, receiving TAP at the 12-point mark. We can see they're a first-year 2020 recipient, so everything here looks good in terms of initial eligibility that the student may be a candidate for part-time TAP. If we are certifying them then that the student's going to be eligible for an award for part-time TAP, you could use the certification status codes 1, 2, or 3. 1 being that they're eligible, no issues, go ahead and give them their award. 2, which is TAP no scholarship, which means that, which could be used by some schools, for example, if the student has a TAP award combined with another scholarship that needs to be full-time. So a good example is students who have both TAP and SAE, which is the Scholarship for Academic Excellence. The Scholarship for Academic Excellence is only available for full-time study unless the student is qualified as a student with disabilities who's enrolled part-time for accommodations under the ADA. So if you have a student who's non-ADA, who's enrolled in 6 credits, and they're being offered both full-time TAP and the full-time SAE, they can't get the SAE, but they could get part-time TAP if they meet the eligibility requirements, and that would be an instance where you would use 2 TAP no scholarship. So that way they get their part-time TAP and the SAE would be decertified. You could also use 3, withdrawn with tuition liability. And this would be the case where students are qualified for a part-time TAP award, but the point that you're evaluating, they withdrew from all their courses, right? So let's say we're, in the later part of the term, you're past your 100% liability date, census date, students withdrawn. They were in 9 credits. If they were certified earlier than when they withdrew, they would have gotten certified for a 9-credit part-time TAP award. Then yes, they could be certified still, but under 3 withdrawn. But that will flag our system to let us know that when they return in the next semester, they will not be in good academic standing due to having withdrawn from all courses, which puts them out of good standing when it comes to program pursuit, right? A student who withdraws from all their classes, no matter what year they are receiving TAP, is going to have issues meeting pursuit. So let's talk about the decert codes that you could use for these students. You may find that students are not qualified for part-time TAP, and right now we do not have a status, and we get this comment a lot, and it might come up in the questions. If they are considered not full-time because they have less than 6 credits, so they don't have enough credits to meet the part-time TAP requirements. Everything else is fine. They have the 0607, they're 2.0 cumulative, they're registered for 4 credits, not 6. Right now, unfortunately, we do not have a decertification code that says not eligible for part-time TAP requirements. So you'd have to try to put them in one of the 2 decertification status codes seen here, and then note the account so that way you can explain to the student that your only issue was you didn't have enough courses. So you could use not full-time, or you could use miscellaneous. You should not be using not full-time to qualify a student for part-time TAP. We've seen some schools make that mistake. They literally send us a list of 20 students and they're like, we certified these students not full-time, we put 9 credits, and why didn't they get their awards? Well, because 5 is a decert code. You decertified all 20 students. You need to use 1 eligible and then put the number of credits to 6 credits, 7 credits, or whatever, to do the proration. So you would only be using 5 or 9 to disqualify the student. You can just do your best to put them in whatever decertification status code you think is appropriate. And then, just make sure that, for our purposes, if the student contacts us, we'll let them know the general requirements, but we may be referring the student back to you for a full explanation as to why they didn't qualify for part-time TAP. Maybe it's because of credits, maybe it was because of the first year, could be a number of factors, but you would be the best source of information for that. Obviously not us, because we wouldn't know right away what could be the disqualifying factor. So here's an example of part-time TAP certification where the certification status is listed as eligible, and the school is then going to use the credit options in the enrollment status dropdown to certify the student as eligible for part-time TAP based on number of part-time credits they're enrolled in. You would not use FT, PT, or HT. FT, PT, and HT is only used for obviously full-time students for FT, and PT, HT is only for accelerated half-time, part-time awards. So if the student is being evaluated, let's say for a summer accelerated study award, all those awards are paid at the half-time level, and you can use HT or PT, doesn't matter to us, to indicate that this is a part-time, half-time accelerated study award. But if summer is not an accelerated term and it's just going to be evaluated as a regular part-time TAP term, then you'd use the 6 through 11. With that being said, you may see this happen where you're looking at a student and you're like, we don't have the drop-down options for all the credits. Why is that? Well, for this reason I have highlighted in red, this student is a first-year 1999 TAP recipient. This student should have never even been advised by your school that they can get part-time TAP because they don't meet the first-year 0607 requirement. The student should be decertified if they're not full-time and cannot meet the full-time requirement. The only exception would be obviously if this is a accelerated term where they're going half-time or more, then in that case, you could use the PTHT to certify them for an accelerated study half-time award. Just be careful with that. Now, we know some of our partners who are the for-profit degree granting schools are not seeing the credit drop downs yet. We wanted to do this training first. So shortly after this training and in the days following, we're going to be activating your part-time TAP certification statuses. So you'll see those 06, 07, 8, 9, 10, 11 credit options in this drop-down box once we activate that on our system for you. So please make sure that in advance of those credit options not being there, that you didn't go ahead and certify a bunch of students for half-time accelerated awards in error, because if you did in eagerness to get students certified for part-time TAP, you may have certified them for the wrong program and they're all getting half-time accelerated awards, which may be deferred. So you just want to be careful with that. So non-degree schools are not eligible for part-time TAP. So if you are in this audience and you're a non-degree school, their non-degree schools are not currently eligible for part-time TAP, regardless if you're for-profit, not-for-profit. You have to be degree granting, for-profit, independent degree granting, or for-profit degree granting to qualify for part-time TAP to be offered to your students. So just want to take a couple questions that have popped in there. Students who are not eligible for part-time TAP due to not meeting the 2.0 cumulative, should you be using 9 or 8? Again, up to you. Ideally, in a better circumstance, we'd have an option that would just say does not meet the part-time TAP requirements, in which case you could lump in the 2.0s, the students who are not first year 06, 07s. Right now, I would just say use the best decertification status that you think you would might be 9, miscellaneous, and then just explain it to the student, or just note your account in case the student calls to ask why would they be certified. Again, if you're using miscellaneous and they're calling us, we don't know why a student was miscellaneously decertified to give them enough guidance. So we may refer the student back to your office to find out why they would decertify miscellaneous, in which case you could tell them they weren't meeting the 2.0 cumulative to get part-time TAP. So somebody's asking, if a student's in 7.5 credits, do you want us to round up or down when entering the credits for certification? So you should be rounding down. So we wouldn't want you to go up to 8. So you'd have to use 7. That's a good question. If a student meets the requirements for part-time TAP for 6 credits in the 6th semester, become full-time in the spring. That is a great question, because evaluating SAP has nothing to do with what the student's enrolled in the future term. So we get this question with full-time TAP. We're getting this question now for, I don't know why, for part-time TAP. When we're evaluating SAP, all we're checking is in the last term our student received TAP, were they in good academic standing to receive TAP moving forward? It doesn't matter if moving forward is a part-time TAP award, full-time TAP award. It does not impact the SAP evaluation. The SAP evaluation is based on what they did in the prior term they received TAP, not what they're doing in the upcoming semester. So it doesn't matter if they're registered now for 12 credits. We had that example, first time out of high school student goes 6 credits in their first term. You give them a 6 credit part-time TAP award. Now we're looking at spring. Spring, they want to go 12 credits. Great, God bless them. They want to go 12 credits, that's fine. Do they meet the SAP and POP requirements based on what they did in fall 24 to get a full-time award now for spring 25, or even to get a part-time TAP award? Doesn't matter what they're doing for enrollment or what program they're getting. It all matters is at the end of fall 24, did they meet their SAP and POP requirements? If yes, they're in good academic standing to now get whatever full-time or part-time award they're seeking for the next term. So just keep that in mind. Registration for the next term does not impact your SAP and POP evaluation, whether they're deciding to go full-time or part-time. I mentioned this already. I said shortly thereafter. I can't give you an exact date, but we will be turning it on within the next few days for those people who are asking why we don't have our credits yet. So got a couple of those questions. So somebody wants to ask about going over accelerated study again. I will say refer to the recording. So that way you can go over that again. And then we're going to be trying to put back out Tap Coach and other stuff that has the guidance. But we've done a lot of writing to schools on accelerated study, and we've mentioned it here, what the requirements are. So we'll make sure that we add some more info on our website too. When reporting tuition charges, we mentioned already adjusting to part-time charges, also making sure that you still report other benefits, right? Just because a student's receiving part-time TAP does not mean that they're excluded from the same requirements about duplicative benefits. So if you have a veteran who's receiving part-time TAP and also receiving Chapter 33 post 9/11 GI Bill benefits that already cover 100% of their tuition, they shouldn't be receiving part-time TAP, right? That would be somebody, if the 100% of the charges are covered, obviously you could decertify the student, you don't need TAP. Or if it's partial, then you can indicate other benefits, and then we will calculate the remaining eligibility based on the amount of other benefits. So please keep that in mind, that you still do your same checks that you would for a full-time TAP recipient, where other benefits are being offset if the student's receiving a tuition-specific aid program or discount that would need to be offset from full-time or part-time TAP awards. So for, Lisa just put into chat for those of the for-profit schools that are asking when they're going to get their switches turned on to get their credits. Lisa said in chat it's going to be 10/21. Let's talk about what happens next. So we process certifications weekly. 24-25 certifications are processed Fridays. If you get it in Thursday evening, we start processing around 6 o'clock. So if you get anything to us before 6 p.m. Thursday, they usually would show up on that Friday's remittance advice. And on the remittance is where you would have the proration and adjustment with the full-time award being converted into the part-time award. And that's where you would look to see, did you get the results that you wanted, right? And so did your student go through? Did they get adjusted? Did they get certified successfully? By checking your errors and making corrections as needed. So your remittance advice, you could look at that, see your output, all your students that were certified part-time, they look good on the remittance. You also can get this electronically through web file transfer, and that would indicate, that would be associated with the payments that would be then issued, where you would know that this payment belongs to these students listed on the remittance for this specific amount. Please, please, please check your certification errors. So after you certify a batch of students, let's say you just certified 50 students, it's very likely that one of those 50 students may go through a certification error and may not be processed. What we find is typically schools do not check their errors in a timely manner, and instead of checking their errors, they email us at Priority Services saying, why didn't this student certification get processed? And then we show you that it landed in your errors queue because you certified something incorrectly. You certified them with, the wrong, with let's say they're a 5-year student, you forgot to put the 5-year indicator. There's a number of different things that might trigger a certification error, and usually most of those can be fixed by, correcting the certification in the certification errors queue and resubmitting. Please keep in mind, though, that there's some errors we may need to assist you with, because it might be an error that you don't understand why it's coming up. There's nothing that you can do to try to fix it, and we may need to look at it. You might have some errors because you certified too early. If you're a 2-year school that offers PTS, that receives PTS, you might have students who are getting part-time TAP and PTS, where TAP is being held hostage by the PTS scholarship, where PTS requires end-of-term certification. So if you're a community college, student has part-time TAP and PTS, you certify now, it's not the end of your fall term, it's going to error out saying that they're a PTS recipient, resubmit when the term ends. So keep that in mind, that if they have a combination, same thing happens if you have full-time students who are receiving STEM. You can't certify STEM now, you have to certify STEM at the end of the term. And if the student's receiving STEM plus TAP, it's going to be held hostage by the STEM award, and that you have to wait to do everything at the end of term to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of the scholarship, which has to be evaluated at end of term. It has an end of term requirement. So please keep that in mind. We do have a bunch of resources on our site. We have the policies and procedures manual with an appendix that's dedicated to part-time TAP. We actually have a whole section of the financial aid administrators area that's labeled part-time, that's labeled TAP and part-time TAP resources. We have a page that fully discusses A to Z the requirements for part-time TAP that I explained in this presentation. So you definitely want to take a look at our site. If you have any questions or are encountering any difficulties, please reach out to our school support team at priorityservices@hesc.ny.gov, and we'll be happy to assist you. Please keep in mind, Priority Services is a schools only point of contact. So please do not refer your students to HESC through these inboxes that are not student designed inboxes. If students need to contact HESC, they need to go through the appointment scheduler. And yes, the appointment scheduler gets booked up. So they'd have to wait for when the next available appointment is added. So we'll answer some questions that came in through chat. I'm going to allow unmute. So for those of you who want to unmute and ask a question, but just before you start unmuting, somebody's asking, how do we certify APTS and part-time TAP? We have guidance on that. So Karina, if you need me to email you our bulletin that we sent out a while ago with that guidance, please email Priority Services and I'll forward you a copy of the colleague bulletin that gave those instructions. Will TAP Coach be added to the new website? Yes. We are looking to add TAP Coach, but TAP Coach is basically a summary of the policies and procedures manual. So a lot of what you could find in TAP Coach is still in the policies and procedures manual, but yes, we're looking to get TAP Coach back on there as soon as we can. So that's definitely, we want to definitely do that. So we'll allow a few minutes for questions. You should have the ability to unmute, so please feel free to do so.
Hey, Mike, it's Chris at Geneseo. I'll get the ball rolling. Going back to SAP, I just want to give a situation. Actually, I'll make a statement. See if it's accurate or inaccurate. First-time college student, never attended any place. They receive a part-time TAP award at 6 credits. And then they receive 12 credit. They receive a 12 credit full-time award in the spring. When we look at SAP after the spring semester, do they have to then be meeting that after the first semester requirement because they haven't gotten to a full 12 credits of or 12 points of TAP?
Correct, right? So remember, the SAP charts are designed on full-time progression. So if you have that brand new student, they're stuck at that first position of the SAP chart until they acquire enough TAP points to be advanced forward. So Perfect. If their 3-point usage in the fall doesn't necessitate them being moved to the second position of the chart, then yes, they're stuck at the 0 requirement, 0 grade, point average, and 0 credits earned.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yep, and then you follow that evaluation moving forward because you're going to have students who come along with odd point counts. So we got that question about, oh, how do we, could we design charts for this? There's so many combinations. You can have students that, the SAP chart is just designed on a clean 6-point progression for every position. With part-time TAP, you can have, an APTS recipient getting, 1.5 points along with a part-time TAP award with 3. They're at 4.5 points. There's so many combinations that it wouldn't be anything like that.
Right. Thanks again. So
Lisa's putting some information about chat about the APTS and TAP certification process. Again, I have a copy of the bulletin. There is a manual form that needs to be filled out with the APTS certification. So if you do need support on how to certify both part-time TAP and an APTS, please email Priority Services. I'll forward you a bulletin so that way you have the sheet, the Excel sheet that you need to send in with your certification. But again, order of operations, part-time TAP should be certified first. So students should be getting their part-time TAP award certified first before aid for part-time study, and then we'll have to make a manual accommodation for APTS. If you're giving them both. If you're only giving them APTS, then just process them normal for APTS. If they're less than 6 credits, then they can't get part-time TAP. You decertify TAP and just do the APTS. Somebody asked again for a part-time TAP SAP chart. I think I've answered that question multiple times. Simplifying this, is New York State aid ever going to be simple, Chris? That's a question for the ages, maybe not in our time. So somebody's asking for a SAP example. So student attends their first semester full-time, have a cumulative 1.8. Second semester, they're going part-time. Would you not certify part-time TAP because of the 2.0? And the answer is yes. You can't certify part-time TAP because they don't have the cumulative 2.0. If they were going full-time and based on their SAP requirements, they would be fine if they were a 1.5, right, is the requirement on that second position. So yeah, it's confusing because you would basically tell the student, you can get a full-time award with your 1.8, but you can't get a part-time TAP award because part-time TAP as a program requires you to have a 2.0. So part-time TAP doesn't say, look at the SAP chart, and if they're okay for SAP for GPA, then they can get a part-time TAP award. The part-time TAP program says all participants must have a 2.0 as a prerequisite of being in the program. So it is what it is in terms of that. And yes, it could be confusing, but that's something that you'll have to navigate. That 2.0 is always going to be a requirement. And again, you can't use a waiver. Somebody's asking if they're not eligible for part-time TAP, is it not just driven by first-time use TAP before 0607? Again, if you're looking on the HESC system and you're one of the for-profit schools, you're not going to see the credit drop downs. Lisa said we're going to have those on the 21st. But if it is a student that when you do have your credit drop downs and you're not seeing the credit drop downs for a particular student, take a look at their first year. It might be because they were a first-time college student before 0607, and the system is disallowing them from getting a part-time TAP award. So you shouldn't be telling the student that they're going to get one because they're not eligible based on the 0607 requirement. For the credits, so 9 credits in fall, 12 in spring. Can they get the part? So this is accelerated study question. I'm not going to answer that. Is our system set up for? You can submit AP. So there's a question about if you're not yet able to certify part-time TAP awards because we don't have the drop downs, does that impact your APTS process? The answer is no. You can submit APTS rosters of recipients at any time. Remember, APTS awards, you can award students up until the deadline by putting them on the roster of recipients. APTS does not get certified until after the term is over when you determine cumulative passing average. So in the order of operations, you should be certifying part-time TAP first because you can certify part-time TAP after your 100% liability date. You have to wait to certify APTS with CPA after your term is over. So that's the last thing that you're certifying anyway. So yes, you could put a student on the recipient list and still, you know, when you get your drop downs, give them a part-time TAP award because it'll happen well before your term ends. Can you estimate part-time TAP awards using the TAP calculator? So you could give them a ballpark estimate, but again, I wouldn't post any actuals. You could put anticipated. Schools right now use anticipated TAP estimates for full-time awards that don't necessarily coincide with what we actually award students. So you just want to be careful that whatever estimating process you're using to estimate a part-time TAP award, that you get our status lists and you get our remittance advices to then update as soon as possible to the actual once you've certified this student, and you know, don't issue any refunds or anything like that based on your estimate of eligibility. Obviously, that would not be something that you'd be in compliance for. So again, the recording, people are asking for a transcript. I mean, if you want to hear my lovely voice, you know, over your weekend when you have free time, this will be posted on our website, and you can replay this and keep rewinding it as much as possible. Somebody's saying it's hard to find the procedures, policies and procedures manual. Once you get used to looking for it, it's pretty quick to find. It's literally like a one-click link once you get into the financial aid administrator page. So, but we can help you navigate there, or maybe it'll be easier once you find it once, just bookmark it, put it in your favorites, and then you'll never have to go fishing around for it. All right, so if looks like we've pretty much gotten to all the questions, so I appreciate folks' time. Remember, priority services, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer your questions and provide you support as much as possible. So thank you, everyone. Take care and have a good day.